Ladies and gents, I'm CGX and this is Total War Warhammer 3 review by the channel MandaloreGaming part 4, I guess is the last part. This is an hour and 10-minute video, big video. But it's very in detail about Total War Warhammer 3. Obviously, he made this before the game was released, so this game is going to have issues that I hope it's already been solved, I guess. Because this video is pretty famous already, 1 million views in a few days. So I'm pretty sure developers are gonna check this review and see where the major issue Mandalore finds, and they're gonna patch that soon. So I guess, yeah. So let's go this one. I think we saw the last time Zeich thing, which is fucking incredible. I love that whole element of it. Zeich is very complex, and I don't know if that's the case with all Total War games. But in this game, Zeich mechanics are incredible. How different they are, how with different empires you have to think differently because they all have their pros and cons. Some cities are big, some are smaller, in some you can probably flank somebody, in some you can't because how it's structured. So yeah, it's just great. Obviously, he said that there are certain AI bugs here and there, which kind of, you know, if right bug hits at the right time could be, you know, just the right thing to ruin the whole experience. But I guess they're gonna get patched, I'm sure of it, because that's a major thing. But yeah, overall game is incredible, so let's watch it. We have left Nurgle, Zeich, Legion of Chaos, and Ogres, I guess. So let's watch this one. Remember, if you like my reacts, don't forget to subscribe so I know which type of videos to react more. Check out the Rick Sunday, there's a link in the description. Check out the cards in cards in here. Let's watch it.
Nurgle is a stinky man, and so is Kugoth and all his followers.
Official Nurgle.
Kugoth combines the horror and disgust of a TLC human interest documentary with the high-stakes thrill of a lively street fight. His forces are gross and diseased, and they know it and love it. The units are horrible to look at, but they have such joy in their hearts. They are wonderfully brought to life and animated, and as you'd expect, they have a lot of flavor on the campaign map as well. For starters, how they build is very different. Nurgle is about the cycle.
Well, because Nurgle is what? Papa Nurgle? Only one of the Chaos Gods who actually give a shit about his followers, right? So he would give a shit about his demons too. Maybe that's why they're happy, right? Because they know actually Nurgle gives a shit about them.
Of life, death, and rebirth, so the buildings do the same. You build it once, then it automatically progresses through a life cycle. At some points, they'll give you a unit to summon and then keep cycling through. There are ways to speed up the process, but regardless, the buildings are always growing and doing something. Initially, gaining the units is slow, but once they're grown, you can summon them instantly. This means once your economy is rolling, you can quickly recover an army or pump out a death stack. You may have guessed that this is a generally slow-moving faction. I mean, Kugoth is practicing some kind of mobility scooter Krav Maga. The idea is to nurture and grow your cities, while cooking up all kinds of plague. Nurgle's special resource are infections, which you utilize in making new diseases. You can easily choose an army or city of your own to infect instantly. You can't directly click plague an enemy, but a cult can unleash a random one. Maybe not in Cathay. You have to hope that plague spreads through contact, and technology and manifestations can make this easier. The more you spread a general type of plague, the more symptoms underneath it will unlock, giving you different kinds of effects you can mix and match to help your forces and harm your enemy. Certain combinations are special plagues like Nurgle's Rot that have much stronger effects. The local dwarfs might not be so tough after catching palsy, or anything else you use.
Wait a minute, there are real plagues in this one, right? Black plague and green pox or whatever that was.
Certain combinations are special plagues like Nurgle's
Rot. This is the, you know, games was the infamous plague that has never been better. Nurgle's greatest accomplishment, the most contagious and deadly of all. Holy shit. These plagues are plague rocket left. Wow. So this is the deadliest plague of them all, the Nurgle's Rot.
Rot that have much stronger effects. The local dwarfs might not be so tough after catching palsy, or anything else you use to box them in. You want to weaken the enemy because your battles are about outlasting them. The army may be slow, but it has a lot of sustaining potential. Army abilities can be activated based on how much damage your forces have taken. Buff or debuff, most of these spread to close proximity units, and there are skills and spells you have that do the same. This is all about making the fight as much of a blobfest as possible to spread all of your bullshit around.
We must engage the
Gross.
Similar to vampire counts, there are obvious ways to outrange and outposition you. You do have some tricks to deal with it, but this is very much a mudball faction. Ideally, Plague will have already weakened your enemies, so the process of tar pitting and outlasting them will be easier. It's a simple playstyle I'm sure people will poke holes in, but it's a lot of fun. It's perfectly thematic for a group that makes everyone in a voting district instantly shit their pants. Hey, we found a dinosaur fossil. Let's shove maggots in it. They do have an issue which is better to expand on when talking about Zeich. So let's change over. Zeich is all about knowledge, scheming, manipulation, and
Really?
magic.
He's just walking past them, I guess. Oh, that is the duration he talks about. No, but he talked very little about Nurgle. Okay.
He's represented in-game by Kairos Fateweaver. He deals with time-space continuum nonsense like setting out to kill his past self only to be ambushed by his future self. That is a normal day in the Zeich gang.
Oh, he's Doctor Who.
This time around,
of
your
this.
special
Doctor Who.
campaign resource is
What the fuck?
Grimoire.
Oh, Doctor Strange, sorry. Doctor Strange.
These are mainly used for unlocking and using the Ways of Change. These allow you to spy, scheme, or cause diplomatic incidents. Incite a rebellion here or there, open the gates for a siege, or transfer yourself a nice settlement. You could gain a lot of direct power doing this, but more importantly, you can be funny. Yeah, I could just take a settlement, or I could transfer it over to Scarbrand, or a different edgelord who will notice the area and get pissed off. Why fight yourself when you can welcome Khorne to the neighborhood? These are very powerful, but the cost does scale, and the most extreme options like swiping a capital just can't happen. It's not an I win button because that's what the army is for. You can eventually get a teleport stance and manipulate magic to help your faction out, but I don't find this stuff worth going over compared to the roster. Zeich is a range-centric faction, from bolt throwing.
So Zeich just fucks with people, right? I mean, yeah, Zeich being master manipulator, strategist type of thing, you know, it kind of makes sense. And he manipulates time, dimension, everything. That's his thing.
Horrors to living flamethrowers. Between the magic and flamethrowers, when you're in range, Zeich can melt like nobody else. If you want it to be extra stupid, use the Lore of Metal. My results screens often look like I use some kind of meme doomstack. A big part of why Zeich is so powerful is that every unit Zeich has comes with a barrier. This is a personal shield generator that goes on top of the HP and absorbs all damage, and also can be buffed. You can get into ranged position, harass, and do all sorts of stuff without your shields ever being broken. And if they do, it doesn't matter much because you can move them away. Then the shields will recharge. They can do this forever. The
What?
slow blade isn't going to penetrate the shield. The overpowered death pendulum from earlier can't penetrate the shield. In a game where health regen had to be capped, I'm amazed that barriers like this can exist at all. And there is no chance they're going to survive as they are. These barriers feel like some kind of compensation. I can win near every fight on the field. But for me, it doesn't hide how boring this faction is to play. The truth is, all of the Chaos God factions have wonderful, fleshed out mechanics on the campaign. The issue is, some previous races have been expanded out to enormous sizes. Even something like Vampire Counts that only got one DLC feels substantial. 3's brand new races like Kislev or Cathay or Ogres still feel really solid. Then you compare these to a mono-god demon faction. These can feel smaller than they already look. All the rosters have Flying Furies, Chaos Spawn, and Soul Grinders. The Grinders are the golden example of what to do. They perform different roles in their respective armies. But even if they perform a similar role, they're distinct both visually and gameplay-wise, so it doesn't feel like you're just playing a clone of the same unit. Your endgame monster is already going to be similar to an Exalted Lord. While someone like Khorne might have reused stuff, they at least gave his mortal followers a brand new look. Not here. There are no donkeys of Khorne, but there are donkeys of Zeich. There are a few layers to why these repurposed units don't make the cut. The first is technical, being the effects that are lost along the way. Let's check out the Chaos Spawn introduced in Warhammer 1. They have this gross, wet, slimy layer to them. This model is somebody's baby. Now let's repurpose it into a Nurgle spawn, which should be way grosser and it's actually pretty dry looking. Work was put into recoloring the models, but they look worse because they weren't meant to be colored like it, and they are way too similar. The unaffiliated Chaos Warrior models from the older game look way better than the brand new ones. They also don't gel with the visual theme for the faction. Having the Zeich warriors covered in skulls seems more like a Khorne thing. And yes, I know on tabletop you repainted warrior models, but we could have a lot more creativity here. Khorne and Slaanesh got unique mortal
But it's tabletop. You do that because it's a limiting thing to begin with. It's a physical thing. You paint it. I mean, what else are you gonna do? I mean, but this is a video game, right? You can use your creativity at a whole other level. That's what the video games are for. Something you can't do in physical world, you do it in a video game, right? Use your creativity. So I mean, there is so many features already in this game. I guess I can kind of see where this, what developers basically like, okay, fuck it with this one. Yeah, and as far as Zeich goes, Zeich, there must be in his, there must be certain traits with his, army that gives you advantage if you use certain type of tactics on the battlefield, right? Like if you try to flank somebody a certain way, Zeich is way too effective, something like that, because he's the mastermind, right? On the battlefield, certain type of tactics, he would be best at that. And the defense thing, I guess it kind of makes sense, right? Master strategists would have everything, covered, defense covered and everything. While Khorne being just deadly all around would have a massive damage with him.
follower models, but Zeich and Nurgle weren't so lucky. Instead of adding something new, they reused old models. To bring up the spawn again, the game Chaos Bane gave them all kinds of variety. Using the silhouette as a base, there could be tons of unique designs. There are creative artists there fully capable of doing that.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, that didn't happen. Again, I'd understand it more if the rosters weren't already so small. If it's going to be that way, at least go the extra mile in making them distinct. They've shown that you can share a unit name and still do that. I mean, the Warriors of Chaos are missing their leaders right now, so maybe something is planned for them? I don't know.
DLC
Will they
probably.
be their own thing or fold more into the demon armies with some kind of DLC? I have no clue how they'll deal with the Everchosen. Subsequently, synthesizing Sigvald's soldiers into Slaaneish's swarms seems sincerely sensible. Saving separation of such squads sustains scheduled schemes and strategies from CA, but fuck, it sure seems like he belongs there. The truth is, when you see how many settlement maps they share, and the same unique capital building, and the tiny roster with shared units, you get that these are sub-factions. They don't feel that way on the campaign map because they are so fleshed out and engaging there. But if you only heard the hype about 8 races, it's not going to be what you expected.
I castrate myself!
This is likely why the Demons of Chaos are recommended as a first campaign. Their roster has every single demon. It's even bigger in campaign where they can get every single Chaos unit. It is so much stuff in the battlefield, I don't have anything to say on it. It would be like asking, what are the nuances of the Radius mod? This is the Toy Box faction, and they give you one hell of an action figure. Channel the power of Spore with a customizable Demon Prince. Or maybe channel Shogun to Avatar Conquest. Dedicate your actions to Chaos Gods and they'll give you special units, buffs, and of course your customizable war gear. Some of these only look vaguely different, but you can come up with all kinds of combinations. Once you get enough glory, you could dedicate yourself to a Chaos God or choose to remain undivided. Except for pure flavor, there's no reason to not be undivided. You already get many campaign features from the other gods. You have Slaaneish's seduction ability, Zeich's teleport, minor switchable plagues of Nurgle, and Khorne's murder meter. I thought dedication might unlock the deep...
Nurgle's like, oh, I'm gonna spread disease. Zeich is like, I'm gonna teleport. Khorne's like, rage, let the meter fill, I'm gonna fucking rip everybody apart.
deeper faction mechanics, but it doesn't. Undivided doesn't cut you off from units, you get every single endgame demon. So yeah, I'm just gonna say this is the demon fun box. Also, man is it ironic that the character with the most story going on is supposed to be the custom action figure guy. It's not like the journey's gonna be that worth it. That leaves the Ogre Kingdoms, which are the pre-order, day 1 DLC, whatever the hell. I actually had to pause when I saw Greasus initial D'ing his way across the screen.
Greasus gold! Over tyrant and all master.
That's like a wrestling intro. The Ogres are a combination of steppe mountain tribes and the worst shoppers at Walmart. They fight to eat and eat to fight and worship the Great Maw, which so far will eat anything they throw into it. It looks like it could be some kind of Tyranid, but it did teach them magic, the special kind that actually lets you cast Fist. The Ogres rely on having meat, and so great is their appetite that if they don't have a steady supply, they'll start eating each other. If they have a meat surplus, they have some options. They can fatten up before a fight to increase their mass and charge bonus, sending all their many enemies flying even further. It could also be shipped off to the Great Maw instead to give all of your soldiers a temporary buff. The meat itself can obviously come from battle, but also by being inside the radius of an ogre camp. It's similar to a horde army, but more like a deployable city. You can't build a lot in the actual settlements, but they do give access to both unique buildings and resources. Greasus can't build a big castle, but he can build a toll booth. They're both brutal fighters, but also shrewd traders. Other factions will periodically offer mercenary contracts for diplomatic bonuses or money, but you don't have to do these if you ever don't want to. You're free to roam around the mountains and patrol your trade empire. You could make money through deals or raid the Grand Cathay trade caravans that pass through.
I like, look at the how mountainous area. This is obviously Ogres, it kind of makes sense. So Ogres is basically one of those, right, one of the simple-minded, but just eats and just, is, big as fuck and just punches everybody. That's the whole thing of Ogres.
It really does play like running a criminal shakedown operation than a proper empire, with a fun balance between horde armies and proper settling. Also, unlike the other factions, their heroes have fleshed out unique skill sets. These encourage you to make meaningful choices and build unique themed armies based around their skills. On the battlefield itself, they are a high-speed freight train. Most Ogres should be charging everywhere all the time. Their charge bonus is ridiculous, and you can get a lot of mileage out of constantly moving around. Except for Greasus, who sometimes slips into a diabetic coma, or is half fighting and half passing out. God bless him. Except for the Noblars, who are more of ammunition and bait.
They're a really comic thing, I guess, in this whole game. This is ridiculous. That whole thing is charge, just eat. That guy just basically sits there with meat in his hand. Sometimes passes out like, what the fuck, you're in battlefield.
the Ogres. The entire roster is large units capable of being hard countered, though with those heroes you have some surprises like being able to field a viable stealth army, just so long as you bring the right units along. Like every DLC race pack since 2, they're great and sure to be favorites, though I do wonder why some of the base game factions aren't quite up to their level. And wow, that's it. Whew. Warhammer 3 has brought in fantastic new mechanics, interesting new races, and a whole—
I think he didn't want to make this video 1.5 hours, something like that. One of his Warhammer 2 videos, I guess. It's pretty long like that. So I guess he just, after Nurgle, he just kind of summarized because he was really fast.
ton of potential for the big mega map. While some areas are incredibly polished, others are unbelievably broken. I think it could have benefited from a longer delay instead of coming out in a month packed with games. Like the Lord packs before it, there are some factions who got the short end of the straw.
See, that's the thing. In this day and age, what you get this halfway is, I guess, is the best thing you can expect, right? Thinking that maybe they should have delayed and literally polish every single edges of it, and that's never gonna happen, because it's not just about game. This is a business, right? All the shareholders, all the investors, I mean, all the developers can hope for they can make a good enough game before they have to release, because it's not all up to their hands, right? They can just tell to the shareholders it's gonna be ready when it's gonna be ready. It's not gonna work like that. So yeah, shareholders are just gonna walk away if that's the case next time. So they have to just find a middle ground, and as far as middle ground, they really went out all with this game. There is way too much detail that is really good. Some of the things I guess they're gonna patch in the future.
I guess it all depends on how things progress from here, since some races who didn't have it so good in the beginning are now living large. For now, I'm more curious about what you'll have to pay to improve. If you already pre-ordered it, I'm sure you'll be happy somewhere down the line. If you haven't done that yet, I can safely recommend it to you on Game Pass. Right now, it doesn't rely on you owning any of the previous game's content. You could get it cheap now on Game Pass with a bunch of other games, then when the big map comes out, you can hopefully buy this on sale when it's more polished up. It has a ton of stuff to love, and I'll play the absolute hell out of it. But besides some design shortcomings, the bugs I encountered were concerning enough that I can't recommend this at full price right now because I have—
Yeah, the siege bugs, like, yeah. As soon as I heard that in the previous part, I'm like, that's kind of big one. Because that's the whole part of this thing, right? Battle. In the battle, siege is the most intense thing you can have in any battle. And in the siege, if there is no pressure moment, right? Like, holy shit, those enemy AIs are here. If they're just gonna run away from the objective, I mean, you're like, what the fuck are we doing here? That will ruin everything. So that's kind of a major thing. They need to definitely solve that problem if they can. But if they can't, the game is a massive issue.
no clue what someone might run into. If the game as is worked perfectly, I'd say go for it. But as someone who really enjoys this series, I can only give it a definite maybe. I don't know if I'll cover what comes next, but at least keep an eye on this game. Enjoying it now depends on your tolerance for a fantastic game that has some bugs and weird decisions covering it up. Please, fix horse.
Yeah, okay. These are credits. I kind of see why, certain things are an issue, because in this game they try to add a lot of things. Like in this video, how, Mandalore said in the early part, like how there are certain things that are really great, right? They added a lot of shit in this one. But because of that, they couldn't polish everything, right? Because probably didn't have much time, right? There is a time period. Basically, in every shareholder meeting, there's a time period you can extend to. Beyond that, it's just going to be unacceptable. Cyberpunk was one exception where they took 7-8 years. I don't know how they kept shareholders happy. Assuming that some of the developers themselves are going to be major shareholders, then it kind of works. Because otherwise, that's a massive issue. So yeah, I mean, look at the Bethesda game studios, right? Fallout 76, I mean, that's the shareholder shit, right? I highly doubt. Doesn't matter how much memes you make about Todd. Todd is just the head of the development department, right? He's not one of the money guy, right? He's not one of the, I don't know if he's shareholder or not, but he's not the money guy. He's the head of the whole team who makes the games. So I highly doubt he really loved Fallout 76, right? But I guess how much time they were taking making this games, right? I mean, Skyrim after Fallout 4, fine enough. But after Fallout 4, what? If you ignore Fallout 76, there is no game. Starfield, I mean, it's gonna be, 8-9 years until Starfield is a thing since Fallout 4. When was Fallout 4? Was it in 2014 or something? I don't remember. 7 or 8 years, right? I mean, that's a major window for any AAA games if big in studios. 3, 4, 5 years is kind of, acceptable thing. If you go beyond that, that just shareholder starts to be, that's why they did Fallout 76. If there is a constant revenue, shareholders going to be happy. So developers have to think about shareholders too. So I kind of understand. That's why I'm thinking of certain thing like it's okay. I don't know. I did a Cyberpunk's review, incorrect summary, Max or something, and that says I understand. Where CD Projekt Red went wrong, and people just in the comment like, okay, they knew they lied. Man, just try to understand this industry, right? It's not that easy. I understand they kind of lied, but they were out of their depth, right? They hyped it up so much. I'm pretty sure later on they realized like they are out of their depths and this is going to be a disaster. But by then it was too late. I'm pretty sure they're not going to do the same thing next time. There is not going to be another hype game like Cyberpunk by them, right? Because they're not going to do that shit again. Right, well, that was Total War Warhammer 3. Game looks really decent. Things are going to get patched out, I guess. Even, I don't know. I guess understand Mandalore is doing major reviews, so I understand where he's coming from. But yeah, even with full price, I don't see the issue. Some maps have issues. Sometimes you might encounter bug, but overall game is decent. So even buying the game is fine. It's not that broken that you won't want to pay the full price and suffer. So I guess, paying the full price right now, buying is not a bad idea either. Right, people, if you like my Rick Sunday phone, like, subscribe, check out the Rick Sunday, there's a link in the description, check out the cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.